Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Trees I got at my visit to Windybank Bonsai Nursery on Sunday. Thought we'd have a look over them. First thing I'm going to do is get the labels off, because once I've actually put the names in my notes, I don't have enough trees to worry about forgetting which one's which. I just don't have enough to worry about that sort of thing. Anyway, this first one, obviously Satsuki Azalea, and it does actually have a variety name. That will focus. So, Kakuko no Bai. Right, so that's that bit out of the way. So that's what it is. But what it really is doesn't show, because what it looks like now is a bush. But why I chose this one was not the front view as such. It was what was round behind, and round here we have some good movement and some quite good branch placement apart from this bald section here. Now this has obviously been stored in such a way that it's faced a single direction for a reasonable part of its life, and consequently all of the foliage has gone off in one main direction. That can be corrected over time, you know, branches can be moved. Branches can be brought round, so we've got some work to do there. But that's why I chose it, and the chances are, when I repot it, I will plant it more upright. I don't really want it heading off sideways like that. I'd rather it was more upright. So I will probably do something like that. Anyway, there's plenty to work with here. A lot of new growth. There's some long extensions that have been allowed to get out of hand. Some of those will probably get taken back. But there's only a couple of those. Most of them have got foliage over a reasonable amount of the length. Now these, although I've never owned one, for some reason, probably because when I belonged to a bonsai society, we had a couple of talks on them. I know Colette, she actually did a talk on these, and she had a couple of imports that had not long come in from Japan that were about 4 foot tall that she worked on, you know, with trunks like that on them. But basically these have a pruning technique that if you want flowers, blooms, you need to stick to. But that's for next year, not for this year, because the chance has been missed, basically. This is mature enough to have flowered. There are indications that it has flowered, and if you're buying one and you're buying a relatively young one, that's worth finding out, because some varieties take a lot of years to mature enough to actually bloom, and some of them bloom on very young plants, and that varies depending on the variety. And Ken gave me a useful tip that I didn't know. And he said it works almost across the board, but as with everything, there are a few exceptions. He said if you want to know how big the blooms are going to be, have a look at the leaf size. And the bigger the leaf size, the bigger the blooms are going to be. Smaller the leaf size, the more petite the blooms will be. I didn't know that. That might be one of those, not a lot of people know that type things. But yeah, basically, once it's flowered, if you have a non-flowering shoot, like that could be, then you can do what you like. But if you get a mass blooming and lots of your shoots have got flowers on, then when the flowers are finished, you cut that branch back to the point you want it to branch out, and it will. And it will do things like this. Yeah? If you leave it for a while and let the tree do its own thing and let it start branching out and putting on growth after flowering, and then you prune it later in the year, you've just cut your flowers off, because the buds will be forming in these new growths. Now I don't see any buds forming on mine yet, but nonetheless the place where those buds will be needs to stay there, because if it's cut off, that's your lot for that, you know, for your following year. So I'll be doing nothing to this year. And as Ken said, he said quite honestly, I'd leave that alone and enjoy the blooms next year. then decide what shape you want it and everything. But enjoy the blooms. So that's the first one I got, and as I said, I got this based on the view from round here. It's the fact that I think that that will actually make quite a nice bit of movement. And then some of these branches can be brought down so that they're more in shape with the more upright trunk. There's plenty to work with here, plenty. So that's number one. And then I've heard many people say, oh, that's my back going, that'll teach me to do gardening, won't it? I've heard many people say you can't have a bonsai collection without a Japanese white pine. And I did have one once. I spent quite a lot of money on the Japanese white pine, and it didn't even make it through the, well, it didn't even make part way through the winter. It died. Now I'm hoping not to do that with this one. And apparently the secret is, with white pine, is to not keep them wet when it's cold. Make sure they're on the dry side. So if you can't do that, like what I can't, I have no shelter in the garden where I can get things out of the rain. Yeah, I don't even have any benches to put things under yet, although I'm working on that. Basically, Ken said if you can't keep the pot dry, and you know we're expecting weeks worth of rain and all stuff like that, and your pot's just going to get soggy and it's cold, put the pot inside a polythene bag and tie it reasonably securely round the trunk. Keep the rain off it. Yeah. And then he said every time you get a nice sunny day or something or other, take the bag off and let the pot get some air and check how dry it actually is and see if it might need a drop. But anyway, this is a hell of a learning curve for me. I got this one because it was quite reduced a bit on the grounds that there's wire marks, and these will eventually grow out. Yeah, I mean this one here is quite, you know, quite dramatic, but it depends on your view. It depends which view you do, you know. And I haven't decided on my main shape for this yet. The idea is, in the main, if you can, is to hide the scar. Now you can hide the scar by pointing it away from you. So that's one option, you know, and then have the tree gain its movement above this bark. The pure white pine, the top part, that will eventually get gnarly as well, but it's grafted onto black pine stock, and the reason that's done is the black pine is more vigorous. And I never thought to say, so maybe somebody can give me an answer, if the white pines are susceptible to rot and everything if they get wet and cold in the winter time, if it's grafted onto black pine, the roots aren't white pine, are they? So are they still subject to white pine? You see what I'm getting at? Now all the pruning and looking after is based on the top bit, but the actual bottom bit, the growing bit, the bit that's in the pot, is actually black pine. So shouldn't that be treated such as a black pine? Anything below ground? Anyway, this is a very healthy tree. There's lots and lots of extending growth, this year's growth. And this is a whole new learning curve for me, is to how to look after what is effectively a single flush 5 needle pine. It's a whole new ball game for me. You know, the pines that I know well. Let me just move the camera back a bit because I'm cutting the top of the plant off. I'll just move back a bit so that you can get a better look without getting seasick, preferably. There we go. Yeah, so my plans for this tree are this section up here, the long straight section, that is there for one reason and one reason only, is to get the rest of it thickened up, and it can stay there a few years doing that job. And then at some point it will come off and a new apex will be chosen from quite a selection of branches, quite honestly, because there's movement on the trunk up to that point. And I said to Ken, did somebody forget to actually wire that top section? He said, no, the top section's destined to come off. It's just there to thicken the tree up and age it, you know, to get it to put on some age. But there's lots of lovely healthy growth on here, you know, this year's growth. But I've got to get my head around the fact that you don't take the candles down, like, you know, my Scots pine sort of thing. You can do a lot of work on the candles as they extend before the needles even open. You know, you can balance branches by the amount you take off of certain candles. More off of the vigorous ones, less or none off of the less vigorous. This is a whole new ball game. Single flush, yeah? And in addition to that, very dense foliage. But I like this tree. It's got some movement in the trunk. It's got a lot of branches to choose from. They may not all stay long term. There's decisions to be made down the line, not now. And it's actually in a clay pot. I thought that was plastic. It's actually clay. And I'd like to know what these are, if anybody knows. Are these some sort of feed pellets? First I thought it was poo. Looked like something like, you know, sheep poo or goat's poo or something, I don't know. But I assume it's some little dollops of feed fertiliser. The fact that they've been neatly placed around the edge. And my fingers don't smell, so it's not poo. But yes, I mean, who knows, I might even, this top section here, this straight section, would actually bend. So maybe I can get this tree larger and actually put some movement in that top section to extend the movement I've already got. It's had a chop here, quite a hefty one as well. So, you know, we certainly changed direction at that point. But yeah. Options, many options, including not necessarily, you know, having it at the same angle it is now. It's choices to be made down the line. But what I was pleased about with this one was that I got the reduction off of it. As the others that were this size were quite a bit more expensive. Some of those had quite ugly grafts, but they didn't have the wire marks. Whereas this one with the wire marks was reduced. But it depends which side, you know, if you look at the wire marks looking from this side are not that bad. This one is bad, this one here, because it's actually, you know, it's almost generated inverse taper. But what a lot of people don't think to do with pines is you can actually peel the bark if you want. If it's a bit too thick, we'll take some off. Yeah, you can take flakes off. Doesn't hurt the tree at all. So that's my Japanese white pine. I've yet to establish what I would call the front, but I suspect it needs to lean forward a little bit. But that remains to be seen, and that obviously isn't going to get done until it comes out of that pot. And it doesn't need to come out of that pot in this spring coming. It doesn't need to be repotted for this coming year. So there we go. I spent far too much money, but having had a hassle journey, that's the polite version. The journey from my house, from my front door into the nursery was 102 miles, and a huge splinter in there. Again, that's gardening, that's blinking blackberry. Yes, and basically I have just under 5 miles to travel on a little A road that's actually quite a good road, and it's not very heavy on traffic, so you can normally keep up a reasonable speed. And then I get out onto a dual carriageway which leads into a motorway, which leads into another motorway, and then I had a section on an A road that had quite a few dual carriageway sections on it, and then got onto the London Orbital motorway, 4 lanes and all that. So it should not take well over 3.5 hours to do 102 miles, should it? So by the time I got there, I had the rats, and that's the polite version. Traffic in this country is, well, it's not the traffic, it's the traffic management. And the individuals who think they've come up with great designs that fail miserably, and they've still got their jobs. Yeah, they just don't take intersections into account to enable traffic to move and not all get bogged up and tail back, cause major congestion, such that the next junction along is congested because this one can't clear itself, can't clear its throat. Oh, plus we've got too many cars, you know, that would solve the problem, wouldn't it? Don't think that's going to change much. Yeah, so very long, tedious journey there. I had some lunch when I got there in a neighbouring garden centre that had a sort of cafeteria built in with it. So I had some lunch first and then went along to see Ken. And I basically whizzed round and did all my filming and got that out of the way because there was hardly any people there. I thought, great, I can film without getting people in the shots. And then started to look round and choose my trees. But, it's another tree that was there. You could see it. Well, it's easy enough to pick out. There was the most superb crabapple tree, absolutely stunning. Had its autumn colours and lovely colouring on the fruit as well, but not at that price, I'm afraid. So I spent too much money, but I had a donation from a viewer who was mainly an Orchid Channel viewer, but has come across to see the bonsai stuff as well, along with some others. And found out it was my birthday towards the end of this month and decided to make a donation to allow me to go and get a good tree. And this is the good tree that was mostly paid for with the funds from that lady. Greatly appreciated, Gail, greatly appreciated. Proper bonsai, yay. And the fact that I had a tedious journey, while I was there, I thought, well, I'm not going home with one tree, I've got to have another one. I could have come home with, I could have spent tens of thousands of pounds there on trees. There were some lovely trees there. But I'll be happy with the two I've got, because making that journey again is not going to happen often. So that's what I got, Satsuki Azalea. The blooms on that, the colour on the tag is probably not true because they often fade, but it's basically shades of pink heading towards red. Yeah, and Satsuki Azaleas is something I would like a few of in different colours. I'd love a yellow one, for instance. I'd love a yellow one. I quite like the two-tone ones as well, but there's a multitude of colours. You know, a deep scarlet red one with small blooms in huge numbers is just a sight to behold. So I will be keeping my eye out for more Satsukis as time goes on, but not loads, you know. But you got the bonus there, at least they're evergreen, you know, so you've got the leaves all through the winter. But they do drop their leaves slowly but surely. They are what you'd call semi-deciduous, I suppose. The older leaves do fall off eventually. They do yellow and fall, as do old pine needles. But there was not much evidence of needle fall on this one, I must admit. There's a few older needles tangled up in there. But it's there's a lot of backbudding has taken place on this in the past, and I was watching a video the other day with some very important information. There is a window of opportunity with these types of pines whereby the age of the branch dictates whether it is still capable of backbudding, because there will come a point where no more backbuds can be generated on that wood. In front of your first couple of, like if you take that branch, the first couple of branches here, backbudding can occur anywhere from that place forward, but depending on the age of the branch, not on that bit. This bit becomes old wood, basically, and it cannot backbud anymore. So you have a limited window to actually push your backbudding. And even though I'm fine with generating backbudding on things like Scots pine, I haven't got a clue on this. So I've got some research to do, some videos to watch. I haven't got books to read because I haven't got most of my bonsai books I got rid of a long time ago. But there's a multitude of information around, and some, you know, well-versed people who've done videos on what to do with a Japanese 5-needle white pine. So I don't think I'll be short of information. Anyway, that's my 2 trees. I can't see me getting any more trees this year now. The next bonsai event that I will go to is next year now. So there's nothing else I'll be going to this year. No more shows or anything like that. And we'll start again with a new season. And by then I should have some reasonable bonsai staging. We've got quite a bit of repotting to do at the start of next year. And yeah, a whole new year. There we go. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by. Oh, I always have to add this on the end. Everybody does it. Why should I be different? If you're watching this and you've got to this point and you're not subscribed, it would be awfully nice if you did so. Doesn't cost anything. And if you don't switch on notifications, you don't get pestered with emails every time I load a video, which is not that frequent because I haven't got lots of trees. I can't do a video every day. There's not enough to do on my trees. And we're coming into the period where there's even less to do because it's called winter time. But anyway, if you're not subscribed, it would be nice and helpful for the channel if you did so. And don't forget the old thumbs up as well if you like the video. And see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.